First, I want to thank everyone here for taking time out to come. This is very important at this time. As you see what's going on around the city, the state, and around the world. So this is an opportunity to get minds together, top official of the state of Indiana that's here from all agencies. And I want to take this time to thank you guys from the Lawrence Police Department, Chief Woodruff, Deputy Chief Bigsby that could not be here, myself. Thank you to the panelists for taking time out of your day to come here and to just have a town hall meeting and to, hear some of the concerns that people have and just to give them an idea of what can be done and what they can do to also participate and do their part to make it safer for us out here. Before we get started, to my right, which will be your left, if you could introduce yourself, where you're from, and years of service.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Cicchini. I'm the Chief Trial Deputy at the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. So I work directly with Prosecutor Ryan Mears. I've been with the Prosecutor's Office since 2016. Before that, I worked as a public defender, and before that, I clerked for the Michigan Supreme Court. I live here in Indianapolis, but grew up in Southeast Michigan, came here for law school, and made it home.
I'm Kerry Forestal, Marion County Sheriff, 40-plus years in law enforcement. I spent most of it at the Sheriff's Office. I was gone for about 5.5 years as U.S. Attorney and returned and was elected Sheriff. And some of you may actually voted for my re-election this beginning year, so this is my second term.
My name is Nick Linder. I'm the Chief of the Criminal Division at the U.S. Attorney's Office here in the Southern District of Indiana. That's the arm of the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice in Washington that is out in the field here. The Southern District of Indiana comprises the, call it, lower 2/3 of the state, so from all the counties from about Kokomo down to the Ohio River. The U.S. Attorney is Zachary Myers. He's appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate. And we prosecute federal crimes in this jurisdiction. I've been with the office for about 9 years, so coming up on 9 years. I've been an attorney for 15.
Kerry Woodruff, I'm the police chief here in Lawrence, and welcome everyone, by the way, on behalf of Lawrence Police again, like Captain Cantrell was saying, and Captain, thank you for moderating this session as well. We really appreciate that. You have big shoes to fill. Typically, Chief Bigsby does that, so I'm sure you'll fill in well. But I have 39 years total in law enforcement, 3 in the U.S. Army Military Police, 14 at Frankfort Police, up in Clinton County, a couple counties north of here, and then 22 total here at Lawrence. And this is my second year as chief. And Chief Taylor, come on up. Welcome. And it's an honor to be here and interact with our colleagues up here. I think as I sit here and look around the room with the colleagues, I have every person's cell number that sits here, sitting on this panel. Maybe other than the gentleman from the FBI, but I know I have this act, the special agent in charge, I have his cell number. So I think that's very special. We have those working relationships established well with each other, and we look forward to interacting with everyone.
Most of you guys know who I am, Tracy Cantrell, Captain of Lawrence Police Department, Commander over Administration and the Traffic Division. This is year 23 for me. Started off my career 2000 Speedway, came to Lawrence Police Department 2005, and been here ever since with Chief Woodruff. So it's an honor to be doing this right now. It like Chief said, usually Chief Bigsby is the one that's up here, so I'm kind of nervous. But I think we can get through it. And if anybody ever needs anything from the Lawrence Police Department, and I'm sure from other agencies up here, please don't hesitate to give us a call.
I'm Doug Carter, the Superintendent of the Indiana State Police. Started my career in 1984. I left the department in 2002 when I became the elected sheriff in Hamilton County. And then this guy named Mike Pence changed my life forever in 2012 when he selected me to become the 20th superintendent of the state police. But not only does Gary Woodruff have our cell numbers, he uses them, which is awesome. And I guess I just want to say nothing's off limits tonight. We'll talk about anything.
Good.
I'm Randall Taylor. I'm the Chief of Police for the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. I can also say I've had a great relationship with Lawrence, and certainly Gary's been around for a number of years, and also the commander for that matter. So it's great to be here. I'm not going to say everything's off limits, but you can try.
Good afternoon. Tom Wintenhalter. So I am one of the 3 assistant special agents in charge with the FBI. I got selected for this position in June, or reported here June of last year. Been with the FBI for almost 20 years. That time has been split between mostly up in the Detroit field office covering the whole state of Michigan, as well as headquarters and detailed to a couple of our intelligence partners. But I've been, like I said, about 20 years here, 9 years of the Michigan Army National Guard before then as an infantryman, probably running into the MP every once in a while. But, you know, we cover the entire state of Indiana here in the FBI field office. We have 9 satellite offices spread throughout the state, up towards Maryville and then down towards Evansville, New Albany. But we have about most of our contingency is here in Indianapolis City proper.
Thank you all on the panel. So I have a question for each one that's up here. And they'll, after their question, if once we're done with all the questions, I'll have, if we have time left, we'll have, you know, a couple questions from the audience. If you have some for any of the participants up here on the panel. So the first question goes to Superintendent Carter. How has law enforcement changed you since you first started? How has law enforcement changed you? And what do you hope to see for the future of law enforcement?
Man. Well, I think since we're addressing this group, if it's all right, I'm going to stand.
Yes, sir.
I can't see completely. I'm a second-generation state policeman. My dad became a state trooper the year I was born in 1962. And if I say that really fast, it doesn't make me all that old. But it's been my entire, this job career has been my entire life. I've never once gone to work necessarily. I've loved what I've done. I was either going to be an attorney like my uncle, my mom's brother, who was a retired judge from the city of Indianapolis here in Marion County. His name was Wendell Mayer. I don't know if anyone might have known him. He died of cancer in 1999. But he was a mentor to me growing up, but I chose the profession of my father. I don't regret it even for 1 minute in time. My dad has passed, but he was able to see this, and we never even dreamed that big that I would ever have a role like this. But here I am, and I'm the luckiest guy on the planet. How has it changed me? I'm damaged goods, like most of us are. The things that we've done over the course of our careers and of our lives, and the hurt, pain, destruction, death, destruction, hurt, and all those kinds of things are not normal, but it's what we've chosen to do. And looking forward to one day being able to try and erase those things from my mind. But I say all that with no expectation of sympathy. I say that only to you because we are human, just like you. We're portrayed to be something other than human, but we're not. We're human beings just like you. We just look funny, and we dress funny. But I'm also going to say that my profession has let some of you down, and I'm more than willing to have those conversations. Now we're at a crossroads in time, and if we're going to maintain some semblance of a civilized society, we have to get uncomfortable with one another. And Chief Taylor and I have been able to traverse this over the course of time here in the city of Indianapolis and even out and about around it. And as uncomfortable as it is, we need to have those conversations. And finally, I'll just simply say to you that my generation, if you did the math, I'm 60 years old, but my generation, not only in this profession, but in this world has failed, and we've missed the mark. We have to say that. If we're going to heal, we have to say that. We have to acknowledge it. And go into greater detail if you choose to over time. In the future, I hope we find peace. I hope that we find a semblance of normalcy with the political divide that we're currently facing on both the right and the left side of the aisle. I'm disgusted to the point in my career I can say what I want and what I think, and I promise you I will. But if we don't talk about how this is not okay, then we're not going to get any better. We're going to give it to your kids and mine, and that's just simply not acceptable.
Next question is for Sheriff Forestal. What determines when another organization is brought in to assist with an investigation?
Within Marion County, we've got multiple agencies. We really have 30-plus law enforcement agencies here. The biggest ones are represented. So they have jurisdictions like Lawrence Police has their area, IMPD overlaps in the area. The Sheriff's Department changed about 15 years ago where we had primary responsibility to respond to the runs. That is now part of IMPD's. So we take the remainder of what that has, which is right now we have 71 courtrooms in a new Criminal Justice Community Justice Center. That's about double what we had before. We maintain 2,400 people in the jail. On a daily basis, we take about 200 people to court. We can run about feeding people. See, something people say is, I run a restaurant. I mean, I feed people 3 times a day, 2,400 meals. And they have to be safe, nutritious. I know that sometimes there are people who will say, if we can get the door shut, there's not enough people. That's not the way it is. We have to live up to the Constitution, and that's why people are in jail. Either they're been convicted or yet to be convicted, and they have to be treated right. As far as the service of the warrants, we serve them countywide. We work with every agency here to be sure that the warrants, we have people on the Marshal Service Task Force. We have partners in other law enforcement agencies to work together. Everybody eventually ends up, if they go to jail, in our jail. We've got 197 people in there right now charged with murder. 3 years ago, in March, just before the COVID, we had about 83. So that doesn't necessarily mean the number of murders went up substantially, but the time it's taken, one thing, some of the trials were slowed down during COVID. We couldn't bring a lot of people in. You yourselves would have been jurors, been exposed to some of the risk. So the courts had to minimize the number of trials. Now it's a lot of pressure being put on the system. In particular, the Marion County Prosecutor's Office has that, the public defenders. We have to have deputies in there to control those courtrooms. So we try to work with all the agencies that are within the county. And what the superintendent mentioned about on something personal, I guess, is I try to still stay upbeat. I've really been lucky. I have 3 adult children, 9 grandchildren. They go to the school in Lawrence, and I appreciate the fact that they're secured by the Lawrence Police. It's one of the best things in my life is to have 9 grandchildren from 2 to 15. So to have them every day, I think about what I do may affect their livelihood. So I've seen some terrible things, like the superintendent and others up here. I've somehow decided early in my career to place things up onto a shelf and only bring them back down when I need them. So I don't have that overbearing feeling sometimes, because it is a lot of police officers that have to deal with that. And it's tragic when you see someone killed on the road in an accident, and it's going to be on your mind for a while. So those are things that everyone has to deal with up here. But I appreciate in particular that all of you have come out tonight to support law enforcement, because your presence here shows a lot. Thank you.
Next question is for Chief Taylor. What is your position on use of force, and when is it appropriate?
Yeah, so I've been on this job or in law enforcement for 36 years. I started in Champaign, Illinois in '87, about a 100-man department, then came here with the Sheriff's Department in '93, and then with the merger of the Sheriff's Department and IPD in '05. I've had the honor to serve in a lot of different capacities as detective and as patrol as detective, as supervisors and the like. And I've seen a lot of different changes, a lot of different things. But the one thing that I've always tried to stay true to is, regardless of whether we're investigating you or just coming across you in a general sense, or you're wanted, or we're going to arrest you, whatever that is, I want our officers to respect everyone that we deal with. Now, from the standpoint of use of force, we have a very restrictive use of force policy. One of the things that we did implement was proportionality, which means our officers are not to use any more force necessary than to impact the arrest. So we all saw what happened with Mr. Floyd in different incidences around the country, and we're very sensitive to that. I believe my officers are some of the best around. I believe they have the ability to make the right decision and not treat people harshly or use their ability to use force in such a manner that it causes the department to take a black eye, per se. So I would encourage people, obviously, to cooperate with the police. However, if they're not going to be cooperative, I think we do have to sometimes use force, and we'll do that. I don't discourage my officers from doing that as long as they've done their best to try to exercise their ability to take control of that situation without using it.
Thank you, sir. Next question is for Chief Woodruff. What are the top 3 issues that the City of Lawrence faces, and how can private citizens help?
Well, the top 3 issues that our department faces are staffing, staffing, and staffing. We are actively pursuing hiring additional people. I think everybody probably sitting up here can say that exact same thing, that staffing is a significant issue across the board for those in public safety, especially those in law enforcement. We're allocated for 65 full-time sworn officers right now. We're working at 57. By IMPD standards or other larger agencies, that doesn't sound like much, but on a percentage basis, that's huge. How many short are you right now, Sheriff, just out of curiosity?
150.
150. So those numbers kind of pale in comparison, but on a percentage basis, they're probably about the same. And I would submit that our department, especially our officers that are out there doing the job every single day and night, get more done with less than any other agency that I'm aware of. Something that we have a huge benefit of also here is we have a contingent of reserve officers, and I don't know if that's been covered yet in the Citizens Academy, but reserve officers are people who have volunteered to be law enforcement officers. They're fully trained, fully authorized to perform duties. You would never know, actually, that a reserve officer may be responding to a call for service as opposed to a full-time sworn officer. But I'll be honest, over a period of years that I've been here at Lawrence, if it wasn't for our reserve officers, I don't think we could do what we're doing on a daily, nightly basis. They put in collectively thousands of hours unpaid to help supplement responding to calls for service, running a jail wagon, doing other things, special events. Oh my goodness, all the special events we have here in Lawrence, we're glad to do them. But if it wasn't for our reserve contingent, we would, well, the fact of the matter is we'd be screwed. I mean, I'm sorry to use that terminology, but we would be. We'd be in trouble. So, staffing is a huge issue. I think something that comes to my mind also as far as the public support, seeing that officer out there, whether it's a Lawrence officer, IMPD, a state trooper, the Sheriff's Department, one of our federal partners, whoever it might be, you see that officer out there, let them know that you back them. Let them know you support them. It can be something as simple as just saying, hey, appreciate what you're doing. I see you. I got you. We have your back. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about what happens. Sometimes you see some things on the media, on the national media in particular, that are sometimes taken out of context. And the fact of the matter is sometimes there's things that we as a profession need to own also. But I think something as simple as saying, I see you, I appreciate you being out there. We know what you're doing. We know what you're up against. And, demonstrating a little bit of empathy can go a long way in supporting our officers that are out there. We have a lot of people who will bring us things. our last officer that had a pretty significant injury in the line of duty. Somebody sent that officer a beautiful handmade quilt all the way from Oregon. I get this big package in the mail, Chief of Police, Lawrence Police Department, and I'm like, oh, what's this? Open it up, and it's a nice note in there for our officer that was shot in line of duty in January. And these people handmade this gorgeous, huge quilt. And so I delivered it to that officer at a roll call one afternoon. And so it's just whether it's a gesture like that or just the smallest little thing of running into that officer in the convenience store, or wherever they may be at. We used to say donut shop all the time, but I don't know if we can say that anymore. But no, wherever you encounter that officer, just letting the officer know that you appreciate him, you see him, and you understand what they're doing and what they're up against. I think that can make a huge difference.
Thank you, Chief. Next question is for Asst Wintenhalter. Did I say it right?
We'll get it. We'll get it.
Sorry about that, sir. Regarding crime, what elevates a crime to the status that requires FBI involvement?
Well, that's more of the question for our lawyer across the way. Predominantly, it's when it violates any of the federal laws that are out there. For most of us, it's when we start looking at the Title 18 violations. That's really where we get into kind of that piece or that realm. The interstate nexus, when we start looking at crimes that kind of occur across borders into multiple states, you tend to find where we tend to get a lot of those, and it just gets to a large scale. Tend to have a higher threshold as far as for that loss or what that crime really is before we tend to get involved, mostly because we have a smaller footprint. Including all of our professional staff, Indianapolis is a little under 300 people for the entire state of Indiana. So when we look at as far as just that resources on it, we have to be selective of how we use it. So for us, one of the key things is that partnerships and all those relationships that we look to build, not just with the partners here in the room up on the panel, but within the community itself and looking for the outreach within the community and trying to get out there to have some of the ground movement there, similar to what all of our law enforcement partners up here try to do as well. So that tends to be the biggest one, is when we start looking at the violations of federal laws that are out there, that's when the FBI tends to get involved on it.
Thank you, sir. The next question is for Prosecutor Zucchini. How do you decide who gets put on ankle bracelet monitoring versus being placed in jail while they're waiting court?
So it's a great question, and actually there's a lot of misconception about that. So when somebody is arrested and charged with a crime, and we partner with everybody in the room in terms of filing charges, but when somebody's arrested and ultimately charged with a crime, it's actually the judge who makes the decision as to what the bond is, whether there is a bond, and what, if any, release conditions are going to be imposed as part of the bond. We will routinely file motions that are called for motions for greater than standard bond. So in Marion County, there is local court rules, and in the court rules, there's something called a bond matrix. And that bond matrix was created by the members of the judiciary, sometimes with public input, and they decide what the standard bond will be, for example, if someone's charged with a Class A misdemeanor or a Level 6 felony, and for all the offenses. In the state of Indiana, everybody is entitled to a bond when charged with a crime, unless they're charged with murder or treason. We do charge a number of folks with murder, so there are, like the sheriff said, there are a lot of folks in the Marion County Jail who are held without bond, meaning there's no amount of money that could get them out. In terms of those release conditions as it relates to electronic monitoring or remaining in custody or not, ultimately that's the judge's call. We will always ask for electronic monitoring for individuals who we think are likely to post a bond and who pose a risk to the public safety. The first thing we'd like to do is keep them in custody, but we appreciate that constitutionally they are entitled to bond, and if it looks like a bond they're going to be able to post, we want to make sure we know where they are. So if it's a crime involving a victim, if it's a crime of violence, if somebody's a repeat offender, we're always going to ask the judge, hey, can we get that additional layer of security for the community so that we know where this person is? So we ask for those things all the time, but ultimately that decision does rest with judges. They're the ones who make that final call in terms of who is or who is not placed on electronic monitoring.
Thank you, sir. My next question is for U.S. District Attorney Linder. Sir. Okay. How can we strengthen the justice system?
Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, right. Goodness gracious.
It's a dissertation question, I think.
Yeah, right. It really is. It's more than you could write treatises on that. goodness. I mean, I think there's a lot of answers to that, and it does depend on what you mean by strengthen. I guess I'd say a few things, just break it down into a few areas, but hardly a survey of I mean, that's a very broad question. One, I think it does come back to, and Chief Woodruff, Superintendent Carter mentioned this, the public's trust and faith in law enforcement is critical to its success. It is absolutely critical to its success in a variety of ways. But the public interacts with the criminal justice system a lot, not all the time. Maybe in your own life you don't have a lot of interaction with the criminal justice system, but when you do, your interaction and that's your faith that the system will work fairly, respectfully, effectively, efficiently is critically important. And we bear the responsibility to ensure that happens. So for instance, when, as has been mentioned, when you encounter a police officer, maybe you're pulled over, as folks know, that is a very tense time, both for you, but for that officer. Ensuring that, as folks have said, ensuring that law enforcement treats folks with respect is critical. When we're in the courtroom, the jury, your interaction with the system as a juror is critical. And having faith that the person that is on trial is getting a fair trial. While the victim, of course, also deserves justice, the person on trial is someone's brother or daughter, father or mother, and they deserve fairness. Our system is built around fairness. It is something that we all, I think, cherish in our roles, and I was a defense lawyer as well. And my job as a defense lawyer previously was to get 0 months. In the federal system, we always deal with months. It is to get the lowest sentence possible, if not to have my client completely out of the system altogether. But my role as a prosecutor is not to get the most months possible. It's not. It is to get the right amount of months. And always keeping that in mind whenever we interact with the public, whether that's in a jury trial, whether that's out on the street in a forum like this, to assure folks that our system really is built around fairness. When we talk about upholding the Constitution, it's not just an oath that we take lightly. It is the reason we get up every day, to make sure that the fabric of our system is something that the public can have faith in. So ultimately, strengthening the justice system, do we need staffing? Absolutely. We actually, unfortunately, here in the Southern District of Indiana are the second least staffed U.S. Attorney's office in the country. We need people. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, the thing that's going to truly strengthen our justice system is to be vigilant. As members of law enforcement and as the criminal justice system, to be vigilant in ensuring we always follow the Constitution, we always treat folks with respect, and we always interact with folks as we would hope, that they would interact with us.
Thank you, sir. The next question is for Superintendent Carter. What constitutes a person to carry a firearm in a vehicle?
Thank you for that question. The constitutional carry issue was a huge issue in the last legislative session, and our legislators got it wrong. But they made the decision, and that's exactly the decision that we'll live with. By having a constitutional, the constitutional carry issue is certainly a Second Amendment issue, and I'm a Second Amendment person. I feel pretty strongly about the Second Amendment, actually, but I also believe that there's not any one amendment that's got unlimited ability. So in essence, what happened in the last legislative session, prior to that, we had a permit process that the state police was responsible for. So you would submit your application, and we would go through a series of steps to determine if you were a proper person that is defined in statute. Some of those proper person descriptors are a previous felon, a substance abuser, there's 13 different criteria that would make you a prohibited person from being able to possess a handgun, specifically a handgun. And we also did a pretty significant effort towards mental health issues. How would we do that? We would reach back to local agencies from anywhere, any community in Indiana, any city police department, any sheriff's office in Indiana, and we'd say, hey, we're learning some things about this individual. What can you tell us? And more often than not, we would hear from the sheriffs that had that person incarcerated for whatever that might have been. Might not have been a felony. That's able to give us a little bit of background on that particular individual. None of this was without process, though. So if they disagreed with our decision and said you can't have a handgun in Indiana because of A, B, and C, they had a process by which they could appeal our decision, and sometimes they won. So I'm of the opinion that that system worked. I never said that it was going to cause police officers to be murdered. That was never, ever even a thought in my mind. But what I did say to primarily our Republican colleagues, and I'm a Republican, was that you're going to add a level of danger to that frontline police officer alongside the side of the road at 2 in the morning, and I feel a personal responsibility for 18,000 of them that are in Indiana. This was right before Noah Shanavez was murdered up in Elwood, Indiana. And so what does it mean to a lay person? And what it means is if a police officer finds a pistol in a car, you can't even ask if the person's proper or not. You can't even ask them. So what do you do with the pistol? You don't do anything with it. You go on about your business because we can't, by law, access criminal history information roadside without a predicate, without a criminal predicate that the person's committed a crime. And that's how it should be. Law enforcement should not have the ability to get into your history without a reason. I think most people would agree with that. So the challenge now is what can we do from a database perspective from our sheriffs around the state, large police agencies here in Indiana, to provide access to that information, but maybe not the detail of it. So I mentioned Noah Shanavez quickly. Noah never even got out of his car, and he was shot 31 times with an AK-47 while he was seatbelted in his passenger's or in the driver's seat of his car. 17 rounds through the windshield, and at least 16 through the driver's side window at about 3 feet away. Had Noah been able to get up to that, had he had the chance to get up to the side window of that car and interacted with that driver and had seen that gun, he couldn't have even have asked him if he was a proper person. In other words, he wanted to kill a police officer that night, and he did. So that's an anecdotal story. There are a lot of those. But at the end of the day, I feel tremendous responsibility now to provide access to our frontline police officers to find out if a person is proper or not. That's really the crux of the entire issue. There were several agencies. Chief Taylor and his staff specifically stood up with me, with us. Steve Reed from Fort Wayne, Billy Boland from Evansville stood up, and we asked the legislators, give us an opportunity to fix it. And they said, okay, fine, fix it. So we sat down and we came up, and I'm almost done. Oh, you're fine. We sat down and we came up with an idea of a provisional license. The provisional license would have allowed an individual to get on a computer at 9 p.m. at their home anywhere in Indiana, as long as they're an Indiana resident, go down through a series of check sheets and swear under the penalty of perjury that the information they gave us is true and it's accurate. What were those check boxes? All the things that make a person proper. Hit the send button. That comes directly to the state police. They hit the print button, and they print out a permit at the point of application, a legal permit, and then the onus came back to us to do that work in 60 days. And if we did the background work like we have done before, and by the way, about 6,000 people a year we would deny, 6,000 people a year we would deny, we don't deny anymore, then we would send them a license, a lifetime license for free. And when I presented that, they looked at me like I had 2 heads and 6 eyeballs, and had no recollection of me coming to them with a solution. I mean that with all due respect. So we tried to do that. We failed. I failed. And now we have quite the quandary on our hands. So the system is the system. I've accepted that decision, of course, and I will continue to accept it and defend it, but I'm also going to ask for a lot of opportunity with funding and resources to be able to fix it for that frontline police officer, because that's what they deserve.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry for the extended answer, but I thought it deserved it.
Fine, sir. Next question is for Chief Taylor. During what appears to be a routine traffic stop, why are there 2 police cars that respond, and is this standard procedure?
Sure. Well, we do train our officers in vehicle stops to back each other up as much as possible. That's not always possible. It depends on the workload, what's going out on the street. But it also depends on what the officer is stopping that vehicle for. Most people would look at traffic stop and say it's just a typical traffic stop. The problem is, no officer really knows if it's going to be a typical traffic stop. They don't really know who they're stopping. We don't have the pleasure of knowing who you are and what a great person you may be. So until they're comfortable, usually going to have backup arrive in order to make sure that everyone remains safe. Remember, the goal on these things is to have as least intrusive interaction with citizens where we can. If officer is writing you a citation for speeding, you may not like it, but the real goal is to slow you down and keep you safe and keep others safe. And people don't typically look at it that way, but that's indeed what we're hoping to do. So like I said, when those stops occur, those traffic stops or interactions with people, there's usually going to be a backup officer somewhere close, if not directly with that officer, and it's really just to make sure everyone remains safe.
Thank you, sir. Next question is for Chief Woodruff. How is the media influencing the community's perception of crime?
Wow, thank you for asking that question, whoever did that. I have quite a media relations background. I've been in media relations since the 90s, since 93, actually, and had an interesting discussion with a media colleague once, and thing I was asking them was, why don't you cover very much positive? There's all kinds of positive that's happening in all of our communities all the time, and the only things that seem to get covered are some of the negative things, whether it's some violent crime that's happened in the community or something that a law enforcement officer or agency has done. You turn on the television and watch the news, it just seems like it's negative, 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 negative constantly, and that shapes people's reality, right? So you think about a typical news broadcast, they're 30 minutes long. That's actually 17 minutes, not including commercials, 17 minutes that they have to inform you about what's going on. And the response that I got from this media colleague was, well, if the buses get the kids to school on time today, that's not news. But if the buses don't get the kids to school on time today, that's news. In other words, if things happen the way they're supposed to happen, that's not really newsworthy. If things don't happen the way they're supposed to happen, then that becomes news. And then a lot of people don't kind of analyze that, and they perceive what they're seeing on the news as a form of reality, when really what they're getting is 17 minutes of the headlines or the highlights, if you will. And maybe not taking the time to research that a little deeper and to see there's a whole lot of positive things that are happening out there. So I think my encouragement would be to everybody to pay a little bit of attention. Here in Marion County in particular, we have all kinds of apps. IMPD has one. You can go online and you can see what IMPD officers and our officers and many other agencies see what has happened in those communities in the last 24 hours. It's all on the website. It certainly, we're connected with Motorola on that. What are you calling yours now, Chief Taylor? Do you remember? It used to be called City something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not remembering either. But there's an online app where you can go on and you can take a look at what has happened in the last 24 hours. And what's even cooler about it is you can click on the incident, and if you have information about it, you can submit that tip to Crime Stoppers. That's kind of a cool feature, and we have that as well. But I think the understanding how the media works, that they are really focused on on getting people's attention and telling 17 minutes of news and a half hour news block, and there's only so much information is going to get covered. I'll also suggest this. Keep in mind that media outlets, even though they're supposed to be very neutral, they're still for-profit organizations. How do they make money? By getting clicks on their website, by getting viewers to watch their programming, and sensationalism obviously sells. Apparently that's what drives people to their websites and drives people to watch certain news broadcasts. So just keep in mind that everything you're getting in that 17 minutes of actual news is not everything that's happening in the community, and do your own research and see and find out what's really going on in addition to what you're getting from the 17 minutes of news.
Thank you, Chief. Next question is for Sheriff Forestal. Do you have adequate training when interacting with citizens that have mental illness?
We do, but we can always have more. I mean, we've had our CIT training, which is to dealing with the people that may have mental involvements in their life. We've had that for years, and we've constantly pushed that program forward. We had a fairly large button that Sheriff Anderson created when he was a sheriff, because he was so proud of the program that he started that we've continued under both Sheriff Layton and myself. It's important to diffuse the situation. I mean, our goal is not to put more people in jail with mental health. I had somebody ask me at a public meeting and said, Sheriff, could you commit to putting 300 more beds in the jail so we could put more people in their mental health? I said, no. I'm not building a mental health hospital. It's a jail. If we're going to build 300 more beds, it should be in a mental health hospital. People need to be treated there. We don't need law enforcement officers putting hands on people that are in jail, because when they resist, now we have another charge that they resisted the police. They need the people that are trained by mental health professionals to deal with people like that. There was a system created at the beginning of the Community Justice Center called the AIC, the Assessment Intervention Center. That can hold about 60 people, and the goal is to have law enforcement agencies divert them before they come to jail. If it's a repeat person that you've seen standing on the corner and we're going to arrest them again for pick a charge, some minor charge, they start back through the system, and all we've done is feed them and house them for a while and put them back out and do it again. That's kind of crazy. So who's crazier, us or them? I mean, if we're going to continue to do that. So we need to put them into a system where they have the medications they need or the proper treatment if it's not medication, but putting them in a jail cell isn't the best answer.
Yes, sir. Next question is for Prosecutor Zucchini. How do you become an habitual offender?
So that is also defined by Indiana code, and there's basically the long and the short of being an habitual offender is you have previous criminal history. The way that works is we have what are called low-level offenses or level 6s and misdemeanors, and then we have what we classify as major felonies. Level 6s and misdemeanors, a level 6 felony is the lowest level felony we have. The penalty range is 6 months to 910 days potentially in the Indiana Department of Correction. And all the misdemeanors, all of which are 1 year or below, and any incarceration would be at the Marion County Jail. Major felonies, level 5 felonies and up, carry penalty ranges of anywhere from as low as 1 year to a mandatory minimum period of incarceration of 45 years if we're talking about murder, 20 years, for example, as a mandatory minimum for attempted murder with a level 1 felony. Becoming an habitual offender means that you've been convicted of at least 2 major felony offenses or 3 level 6 misdemeanor criminal charges. And there are time restrictions on those as well, but I believe 10 years. So that's how someone becomes an habitual offender. So if they have 2 major felony convictions and they are charged with a 3rd major felony, we can file what's called the habitual offender sentencing enhancement. And if the person is convicted of that charge and a jury or judge or they plead guilty to the habitual offender sentencing enhancement, that can add an additional 6 to 20 years on top of their sentence and it would be up to a judge how that time is allocated. But for example, with a level 3 felony, is we see a lot of these in terms of armed robberies. The minimum is 3 years, the maximum is 16 years, but if somebody's charged with a level 3 felony, convicted of that and the habitual offender sentencing enhancement, their penalty range goes from a mandatory minimum period of 9 years to up to 36 years. So that's the process of how somebody is designated as an habitual offender and some of the increased penalties associated with that.
Thank you.
About that,
Yes, ma'am.
you said is that at the discretion of the prosecutor, or that's not automatic?
Yes, ma'am. It's discretionary with the prosecutor, and it depends on the case, the individual, the charge. There are some offenses where the case is going to be really difficult to prove. We may not pursue the habitual offender sentencing enhancement. Sometimes if there's an individual who has committed a number of serious offenses in a short period of time, we may be more likely to do that because that person is demonstrating that they're a danger to the community, and we need to seek that additional punishment. Absolutely.
At this time, does there anyone from the audience have any questions for anybody that's on the panel? Sir?
Commissioner Lawrence, please. More of a comment than a question. I had the honor of doing a ride-along this morning, and I asked the officer what, what the most intense situation he had, over the last few years. And what he told me was a situation, and then once he told me that situation, I asked him, how did the department handle that for your mental health? And he just said that the mental health support he got from dealing with that situation was tremendous. And I just wanted to say that I'm glad that where I live, that's an emphasis in the police department, because they can't do their jobs going forward if they don't have that type of support. And that's something that I really, really appreciate. And I wanted to thank you for that.
Wow.
Thank you, sir.
Well, Tracy, can I thank you for that, first of all. And I would invite anybody to talk about that, but especially the superintendent alluded to this earlier. This is something that throughout my career arc, and probably everybody up here's career arc, that we have work to do yet, but we have made significant strides in this area. I can tell you when I first came on that my colleagues and peers would have been, and family, would have been the last people that I would have talked to when it came to dealing with a traumatic environment. And I think we've seen a dramatic shift in that. Certainly the department bosses, oh my goodness, I couldn't even imagine talking to some of the department bosses that I've had before. No way. And so I hope that trend continues. There's work yet to be done. I personally am actively looking at a holistic officer wellness program to bring into our department. Fishers has done it, Carmel PD has done it, Noblesville PD has done it. Other progressive agencies are going down that path, and it's a holistic wellness program to look at not just the physical, but the mental, the emotional, the kind of the whole package, and being proactive with that. We've gotten incrementally better at being reactive to that. Now, the next step or steps to take would be to be more proactive with that. Superintendent, do you have anything you want to add to that? You kind of alluded to it earlier.
Spot on. Getting there.
Yeah.
Chip away at a piece at a time.
Chief or
I
Sheriff?
don't mind. I would.
Well, and Sheriff, shout out to thank you for that, by the way. Sheriff Forestal has somebody on his staff that is amazing, and she's a yoga instructor, but she's a dear friend also. She used to be his media relations person, but she's doing something pretty innovative. Is that what you're going to talk about?
You said what I was going to say, because if we skipped her, yeah. She's done a fantastic job, and it's a full-time position as Director of Wellness, and I know that we were at the National Sheriff's Association. I wasn't there, but somebody was sent, and they asked a question on how many people had full-time, and they were, as the hands went down, it was fewer and fewer agencies, and we were one of the few that actually had a full-time. And speaking back what the chief said earlier, I can recall very early in my career, there was an officer who was involved in a police action shooting, and he went to a deputy chief to say, I need to talk to somebody. Who is it I talk to? And he said, we don't have problems like that. Mm-hmm. Now, that's how it was. I mean, you had to, what would have been used the term then, man up. And that's a terrible way that it was. And we've realized, and I'm sure all of us sitting here who've gone through that have had it to where now we know that the officers are an investment. Both he and she are out there dealing with you, and if we expect them just to close their mind off and move on, that's not the best thing. Some people can do better than others, and we have a program, we have a peer support program where people can volunteer to be part of that program. So we didn't invent it, but we do have a full-time person, and I think it's really been important, and one of the things I've received feedback from people who would just say, thanks, Sheriff, for putting this in there. So thank you for mentioning that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I do. This is kind of for everybody. Just as normal citizens get up, going to work, coming home, besides thanking individual officers, what can we do to help? I
can answer
know
that.
that there's, I hear all the time, see something, say something. But I know behind that, there's a lot of, I don't want to get involved. I'm afraid. I don't know what they'll do to me if I stand up. But what can we do as a community to help you guys?
I can answer that. So, like Chief Woodruff, Superintendent Carter, Chief Taylor, always, you see us on TV when we have major incidents. And the one thing we always ask, please contact us if you have seen anything. 262 tips. I'm sure you guys heard that. We've said that over and over and over again. And for some odd reason, it seems like people don't want to get involved because potentially it could be someone next door to them, someone that they know. They're just afraid, or some people unfortunately don't care unless it affects them personally. That's where we're kind of at right now. And it's sad, but what can you do is, just as they say, if you see something, please report it. You call in. Those individuals that are committing crimes or anything to that effect, they're not going to know that you're the individual that called in. I think that's the biggest fear that people have, especially when dealing with a next door neighbor. You know, you can only guess if the police show up who called that lives around you if you're causing a problem. So that's what helps us, is please give us that information. I've numerous cases, you know, I've taken people to the side, away from everyone, give them my card, give me a call later, just to help our investigations. Chief, he's done that when he's investigations and things to that effect. So please, whatever you do, if you have information that will solve a crime, please call us. That's the biggest thing that I feel that with all of us up here that we can, because Chief Taylor says it all the time. You know, you can be out there at a scene, 15 people are there. Those 15 people seen an individual do harm to someone. Physically, they know who it is. We ask it, they don't know who it is. Or they say, do your job. I hear that a lot too. Go do your job. But if it was their family member, they're the first ones to call, and you see them on the news crying and upset to say, hey, you guys need to do that. But yet there was an incident where they could have had crucial information and didn't give it to them. So I would say, please, just if you have information, please share that. That's the biggest thing.
I know there's a lot of fear out there.
Yes, ma'am.
I worked with a woman my age who had a son that was murdered. And she said that everybody knew who it was. They were afraid to say anything. They were afraid of retribution. And that really just to sit here and listen to her tell me the story of how he was murdered, and several people knew, probably had evidence that he was the perpetrator, but they were afraid to say anything.
Yes, ma'am.
For his family, because of his family, his friend. It's just sad. I just think it's sad.
Yes, ma'am.
And if I can jump in on that.
Go ahead, sir.
So I prosecute and have been prosecuting for the last several years, primarily murder cases. And I can tell you, and I think everybody would agree with me, that it is the rare case that it is a genuine whodunit and that it is a genuine we don't know what happened. The success rate or solve rate would probably be close to 100% if we had that witness cooperation. One of the biggest hindrances to a successful prosecution for any crime of violence, especially homicides, is witness cooperation and victim cooperation in cases not involving a murder. That's the biggest thing. We work really hard to establish that trust. Going back to your comment about the system, building trust in the system is the single most important thing we can do, because when we have those conversations with people, We need them to trust us that what we're telling them is the truth. We have programs for individuals. We have the Victim and Witness Assistance Program at the Marion County Prosecutor's Office, and there are other programs in the city to provide assistance to individuals who do have those fears, who do have those concerns about their safety. I've personally been involved in prosecutions where we've put individuals in hotel rooms around the time of trial so that they had a safe place to be, that could give them a peace of mind. Nobody's going to follow them home, anything like that. We take care of those things for them. That's a way for us to build trust. If people are about to get evicted and they don't want to be on the street, that's a way to build trust. We can help them with their rent. We could help them with their utility bill. But the biggest thing anybody could do is just to be involved in the system. If you see something, say something. If you get a jury summons, come to court. It would be an incredibly eye-opening experience for you. Most people don't want to do jury service, but in my experience, most people really enjoy the process. It's one of the single greatest checks on authority that anybody in this country has to serve on a jury. And this is just a super long-winded way of saying that when people cooperate, when people who are on the scene, who they say who did it, they cooperate with the prosecution, they cooperate with the investigation. That's what leads to justice for the victims, to justice for the community, and getting dangerous people off the street.
Sir, if I could, and just to even add on to even what Nick had said and what the prosecutor was saying, don't not consider calling the FBI as well, because in a lot of these cases, one, we have that partnership. But when you look as far as into that next level, we are that agency that is sometimes put in the position to review and look at what our law enforcement partners throughout the state have done. And when we start looking at those civil rights or color of law violations, we tend to be that lead agency that's investigating them. So again, building that trust piece back within the community. There are some of the recent announcements that we had up north, but Muncie being one of the closer ones that we had, where there was a lot of several arrests as far as of some of the law enforcement out there that, we led those investigations. That is there to try to build that trust back up within the community, because we can't do our jobs without everybody up here or without the citizens in the community that are out there, but more so because of the day-to-day interaction that our local partners and our state and county partners all have with the likelihood that they are more likely to encounter people on the street than we are as a federal agency. So if there's no trust there, then this all breaks down. So if you need to, don't hesitate to contact the FBI. And then if it's something that we would investigate, we'll obviously pursue that. But we have the partnerships to work with it that way. But it's also key that we make sure that there's that trust relationship. And it's a solid relationship between the community and the law enforcement partners that are around them.
Can I add on to that from a local level? And this is another opportunity that I'll take to shout out to our officers and detectives that are out there working every day. Let me caveat this. In 2022, we had 2 criminal homicides. 2021, we had 5. The only acceptable number is 0. We all know that. So I'm not celebrating that we only had 2 and 5. I'm not celebrating that. The only acceptable number is 0. But by other agency standards, those are not really bad numbers. But the investment that our officers and detectives make, and where I'm going with that is we're 7 for 7 in solving the last 7 homicides we've had over the last 2 years. We've solved all 7 of them successfully. And I think that is in huge part and almost in significant part due to the investments that our officers and detectives have made in the community to build those levels of trust, to get people to cooperate with us. Technology's had a big part of that also, but I know IMPD is making that investment, the prosecutor's office making that investment, the sheriff's department, really everybody from top to bottom. But at the local level, at the contact level, when it comes to that, it's our officers that are out there every day, our collective officers that are out there every day that are making those investments. A former IMPD chief, Rick High, used to say, putting chips in the bank. That was one of his kind of go-to statements. And so when you see that officer out there that is giving a break on maybe a dime bag of weed, we used to get that on Life PD a lot. Where an officer would give a break on a dime bag of weed or on a traffic violation. We're investing in that. So maybe the next time something significant happens and that person remembers, hey, I got a break from Captain Cantrell that one night, so we just saw this violent crime happen, and we're going to talk, we're going to share that information, we're going to contact Crime Stoppers, we're going to share their information and hopefully lead to an arrest and prosecution on that. So anybody else want to jump on that same Same string there, Chief.
Let me just say this, we have a lot more homicides than you guys have, and you guys do a fantastic job. It's much appreciated. I know for me, I can't investigate all of those. My detectives do a spectacular job investigating, but I think where they get frustrated the most is, like I said, when they know somebody knows, but they're not giving us that information for whatever reason. One of the things that I've taken upon myself, every homicide that we have, especially in this year, I have some kind of contact with that next of kin. For a couple reasons. One, because I want them to know that we care, whether we've solved it or not, we care. If you've heard me speak, I dealt with this issue myself back in '93. My father-in-law was killed in Fort Wayne, Indiana by a 12-year-old. And so I've been on both sides of this coin, both as the victim and obviously as a police officer. But I know it's important to keep those connections with those families. And the hope is that at some point, whether it's today, tomorrow, next month, next year, they'll stay in touch with me and they'll let me know if something comes up. I think the other frustrating thing is all of us would say it. A lot of times people say, I know this person did it. Well, how do you know? Well, I just have a feeling. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, we have to have more than that in order to get charges typically filed by the prosecutor. But we're obviously willing to stay in it, and we're trying to connect those dots to make those things happen. But it's not like it is on TV, right? It's not done within an hour. Sometimes those things take a lot longer, but please don't think that we're ever giving up.
Thank you.
Good to hear.
Yes, ma'am.
So, like you were saying, call that number. So if I call on myself, doesn't my number pop up and
It's still, even if it does, it's still, that individual that you're calling on would still never know. So if you have that fear of just knowing, yes, with caller ID, even if you call 911, your name's going to show up. So even on a cell phone. So that right there, we still need that information. That is not going to be mentioned that you called in for a particular incident.
There's a lot that goes into Crime Stoppers. The servers for those things are not even here in the United States, so no one's going to be able to subpoena that and get those records. They're very cautious about that and try to do everything to make sure. And I don't know of a situation that's ever happened without someone else, like if you called and told someone that you called, it would not come from Crime Stoppers.
So,
I was going to say also, unless it's changed, if you start by starting star 67 before you dial that number, it blocks whoever you're calling. So for the good purposes, but for somebody who wants to be a witness, I'm sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
going to jump in on Crime Stoppers again also. That is such a successful, positive thing that we have here in Central Indiana. We get tips from them every day. They are truly anonymous. That system has not been breached. The people are eligible for a cash reward when they provide a tip that leads to an arrest and prosecution. The vast majority of the time, those are not followed up with. It's not by Crime Stoppers. It's followed up by Crime Stoppers. It's not followed up by the citizen who called that tip in. But it is a truly safe and anonymous way. And I'll defer our friends at the prosecutor's office. Have you ever had a breach in that system in any case that you worked?
No, I haven't. But what I will say is there's another side to that coin. It is important if you see something, say something. It is important to contact the police. But once a case is filed, it's not enough that you called the police. It's not enough that you even gave a statement to the police. We can't bring someone to justice and we can't hold someone accountable for what they did without the cooperation of somebody coming to court. We need someone to sit in the witness stand, take the oath, and testify about what they saw. No matter how big or small you think that role is, or how inconvenient it may seem, it is hugely important. Anonymous tips are absolutely important. Law enforcement needs those 24/7. But anonymous tips don't get us convictions. We need witnesses and other evidence to get us convictions, and people are hesitant to do that. We will build those relationships as much as we can. We will be honest and upfront with people about what it is going to cost them in terms of time and resources, and we will do everything we can to make it as easy and painless as possible. But I'm sure I can speak for Nick on this. Without people coming to court, without people seeing it through until the end, we are not going to be able to hold someone accountable for what they did. We need that witness cooperation.
Yeah, if it just real quick, you had said the complaint that some folks say lob as a missile, do your job. Well, the fact is, doing our job is interacting with the public and having witnesses stands exactly right. Someone will not get convicted without a witness. The police officer cannot sit up there and testify as to what other witnesses told them. They can't. There has to be the actual witness, because that's our system. It's not fair to have some hearsay come through and that's what someone gets convicted on. It has to be the person that saw it. It's inconvenient, but it's the way it is. And to truly get that person off the street, there has to be a witness. And you asked what else you can do. It is also to encourage others to speak up. If you, I do get the sense, unfortunately, I think we all do, that we are in a day and age where social pressure matters a lot. It always has, but maybe even more so now. And if there's no one, it's sort of the bystander effect, where if no one in the room speaks up, if someone says, I knew who shot so-and-so, but I'm not going to say anything. If everyone sits around just, doesn't comment on that, well, that's not going to get solved. What you can do, and friends of yours or family of yours can do, is encourage others to speak up. Even if you're not the one who saw it, you can still play a role in lifting up the fabric of society to say, hey, look, we need you. I'm going to get out of jury service. No. If you end up getting out of jury service, then the fact is the jury is packed with people who have an agenda. They're packed with people who want to be there. That is not a jury of your peers. That's a problem. So play that role, even if it's not you. Play that role if you can to encourage folks, other folks, your friends, family, to do the right thing.
Ms. Freeman, you be the last one.
First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight and giving us the enforcement of how law is supposed to be handled. But getting back to the Crime Stalker, you said there was a click on a link and you can be anonymous on those certain robberies or whatever happened in that area.
I think it's something I mentioned about an online website that you can click onto, and I'm trying to remember what the one that IMPD had. That we have the exact same thing, and we still do, where people can do that online there, and they can see what's been going on in the community for the last 24 hours.
Ours was called Community, but I don't know if that's up to date. That's the last one we had.
Ours stays up to date. Yeah. Yep. But
I just looked at mine, and that's why I'm not sure it's up to date, because it doesn't have the correct address for our Northwest District.
okay. All right.
I can get that information for you.
We'll get that information out there to everyone. Can I go up on one more thing? Sorry, to kind of shift gears very quickly. In addition to the crime part of what we're talking about, being involved in the community, we all are doing a lot of community outreach now, whether it's community safety days, whether it's district safety days, whether it's National Night Out. July 4th is a big deal here in Lawrence, our parade and our fireworks and all that. But every agency represented here, especially the local agencies, are doing events like that, participating in those, coming out, bringing people, interacting with law enforcement in a non-enforcement setting. And even inviting people to come to Citizens Academies, to like this. I think it's a great way to interact with your public servants in a non-enforcement environment, and just getting to know people, if nothing else. In my mind, it's all about the relationships. I'm a relationship builder anyway, but it's all about developing those relationships and getting to know us. And I know we do a lot of investment in the community when it comes to getting out there and doing those types of activities. We really appreciate that.
Thank you. I want to take the time to thank everyone for coming in to ask questions and really get to know your top law enforcement officers of the state of Indiana. But before we wrap up, Superintendent Carter has something he wants to give to someone. Dave, can you come up here, please?
Yeah, you, Dave.
Yeah, you.
I think about everybody, at least the guys up here, know Dave, and this is really long overdue, but we go back a long ways. And when he retired, his lovely wife, who's the photographer in the back, said, "Hey, do you think the governor might do something for him?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I think he probably will." We've been trying so hard to surprise you. And now that you're retired, you're never home.
Of course.
Yeah, so I have a hard time running you down. But if you'll allow me to just read this quickly, after a long and distinguished career, 40 years, retiring from the IMPD, some individuals distinguish themselves through significant contributions to their communities. Qualities and characteristics of such individuals reflect the best of the great state of Indiana. The actions of these individuals endear them in the hearts and minds of all Hoosiers. The individual named below is such a person who has earned the respect and admiration of Hoosiers across the state and is worthy to join the ranks of those so honored. Now, therefore, I, Eric J. Holcomb, Governor of the state of Indiana, do hereby and declare and appoint David Joseph Loyal as a distinguished Hoosier. Congratulations to you.
Real quick,
Sir.
that site is City Protect, sir. cityprotect.com.
Thank you.
Again, thank you,
Drawing a blank.
gentlemen, for coming out of your busy work schedule to have this meeting, and hopefully others in other places will invite you to do the same thing as what we do here. So if there's anything that the Lawrence Police Department can do to help in any way, Chief Woodruff and myself and Deputy Chief Bigsby, we'd be more than glad to assist with anything and help with any resources that we can to do that. So again, thank you very much. And thank you again for participating in this. So,
All right.
thank you.
Very much.